What if the most celebrated name on New York's skyline and America's greatest charitable checks belonged to a man who also controlled 90% of the United States oil supply from behind closed doors? Standard Oil's legacy is praised in endowments and billion-dollar donations, but that history hides a ruthless system of dominance, one that rewrote the rules for every monopoly to come. So how did philanthropy and absolute market control become two sides of the same fortune? The answers begin here. A name carved into stone and steel across America, John D. Rockefeller's legacy rises above the skyline and shapes the world beneath it. In the heart of Manhattan, Rockefeller Center stands as a monument to ambition, a city within a city, crowned by soaring Art Deco towers and bustling plazas. But the Rockefeller imprint extends far beyond architecture. In the early 20th century, Rockefeller University opened its doors, devoted to medical research that would change the course of science and save countless lives. The Rockefeller Foundation, established in 1913, declared a mission to advance the well-being of humanity worldwide, funding everything from public health campaigns to groundbreaking disease research. Decades earlier, in the 1890s, Rockefeller's fortune helped launch the University of Chicago, transforming a fledgling institution into a powerhouse of American higher education. These gifts were not minor gestures. By the end of his life, Rockefeller had donated over $500 million, more than $14 billion in today's terms, making him the most generous philanthropist the country had ever seen. His philanthropy reshaped universities, hospitals, and research centers. The foundation's endowment still stands at $5 billion, fueling medical breakthroughs and public health initiatives around the globe. Textbooks and commemorative plaques tell the story of a benefactor who believed that wealth carried a duty to serve the public good. Rockefeller's name became synonymous with generosity, his image recast as the grandfatherly figure who handed out dimes to children and funded the fight against disease. The institutions he built endure as pillars of learning, healing, and progress. From the marble halls of Chicago to the laboratories of Rockefeller University, the fortune born in oil became a force for transformation. For generations, these gifts have shaped the way Americans see the Rockefeller legacy, not simply as a story of profit, but as a story of giving, vision, and lasting public benefit. In the late 19th century, Standard Oil became less a company and more an industrial system, its reach mapped in numbers that dwarfed every rival. By 1880, Standard Oil controlled 90% of all oil refining in the United States. The company's grip extended far beyond a handful of refineries in Cleveland or Pittsburgh. Over 20,000 oil wells, scattered across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and beyond, pumped crude destined for Standard's tanks. The sheer scale of these operations was unmatched, but the numbers tell only part of the story. Standard Oil did not simply refine oil, it built an unbroken chain from wellhead to lamp. The company owned the land that produced the oil, the pipelines that carried it, the refineries that processed it, and the barrels that stored it. Railroads and shipping terminals moved Standard's kerosene to every corner of the country. Even the retail outlets, the small-town merchants who sold oil for lamps and stoves, often answered to Standard Oil's network. This vertical integration gave Standard Oil an advantage no competitor could match. While other refiners scrambled for stable supply or affordable transport, Standard's empire moved as a single, coordinated machine. Every link in the chain, drilling, transport, refining, distribution, was controlled from the top down. That level of coordination meant Standard could flood the market with product, cut costs to the bone, and respond instantly to any challenge. No other company in America's young industrial age had ever assembled such a system. Asset maps from the era show Standard's presence blanketing entire regions, with pipelines and rail lines radiating from major hubs. The company's asset ledgers listed thousands of wells, hundreds of miles of pipe, and dozens of refineries. Each facility, each stretch of track, Each barrel of oil fed into a single, integrated operation. The result was a kind of industrial AWE, a recognition that Standard Oil had not just outgrown its competitors, but had built an economic organism too vast and efficient for any rival to threaten. In this world of numbers and scale, the rules of competition began to bend, and the fate of smaller refiners was no longer in their own hands. In 1872, a single line in a railroad ledger spelled disaster for Standard Oil's rivals. While independent refiners paid 40 cents to ship each barrel of oil, Standard Oil paid just 10 cents. The difference was not a rounding error, it was a deliberate advantage carved out through secret contracts with the nation's largest railroads. The South Improvement Company Agreement, exposed in sworn testimony that year, revealed a system where Standard Oil not only secured the lowest rates for itself, but also collected rebates on every barrel shipped by its competitors. Every time a rival loaded oil onto a train, a slice of the fee circled back to Rockefeller's company. Rail executives justified these arrangements as rewards for volume and efficiency, but the numbers told a different story. A 4-to-1 cost gap meant that even the most efficient independent refiner could not hope to match Standard's prices. Internal contracts unearthed decades later by federal investigators showed that these rebates were not tied to actual cost savings. Instead, they were a weapon, one that could bankrupt any competitor who tried to fight on equal terms. For the independents, the math was inescapable. Every shipment widened the gap, funneling profits to Standard Oil and draining their own. The rebate system did not just tilt the playing field. It turned the railroads themselves into silent partners in Standard's rise. The 10-cent rate became a numeric cornerstone, a figure that would haunt every competitor and appear again and again in the evidence against the company. The monopoly was built not on oil alone, but on the arithmetic of freight. Standard Oil's arsenal stretched far beyond cheap shipping. In city after city, the company launched price wars that drove rivals to the edge. Kerosene sold for less than it cost to make, sometimes pennies on the dollar, wherever an independent refiner tried to compete. For local operators, the math was brutal, watching their own prices collapse and knowing they could not survive the losses. But the real sting came after surrender. Once the last competitor folded, prices did not just recover, they soared, doubling or tripling in those same markets. Charts from the era show kerosene jumping 200 to 300% above the old rates, hitting families and businesses that had grown used to bargains. While the price battles raged in public, a quieter war played out behind closed doors. Standard Oil sent agents into rival offices, posing as employees or customers. These spies collected trade secrets, copied customer lists, and reported every move back to headquarters. One former operative, exposed in 1905, admitted under oath to infiltrating companies on Standard Oil's behalf. Information from these missions guided the next wave of attacks, including targeted discounts, poaching key clients, or even sabotaging supply lines. Politics offered another front. In Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New York, Standard Oil funneled money to lawmakers willing to write favorable rules or look the other way. Some officials received direct payments. Others were courted with promises of investment or jobs. The company also set up shell firms, so-called independents that on paper competed with Standard Oil, but in reality answered to the same boardroom, maintaining control. For small refiners, the message was clear: sell out or face a campaign that left nothing standing. In 1882, Standard Oil introduced a new kind of corporate machinery that would shape American business for decades. Instead of merging all its parts into a single company, it created the Standard Oil Trust, a legal shell that gathered 41 separate firms under one roof. Shareholders in each company surrendered their stock and received trust certificates in return. These certificates did not give them a say in daily operations. Instead, all real power shifted to a handful of trustees, with John D. Rockefeller at the helm. The trust agreement spelled out sweeping authority. Trustees could buy, sell, merge, or dissolve any company within the system. They managed assets stretching from Pennsylvania oil fields to New York refineries, all coordinated through a central board. This meant decisions that once required negotiation among dozens of boards and hundreds of shareholders now moved in lockstep, guided by a single set of interests. The legal design sidestepped state laws that blocked companies from owning out-of-state businesses. By holding companies in trust rather than direct ownership, Standard Oil bypassed the patchwork of state regulations that had kept other corporations in check. The result was a structure nearly impossible for regulators to untangle. On paper, each company remained independent. In practice, the trust controlled every major move in the American oil industry. This blueprint spread quickly. Sugar, whiskey, and steel magnates copied the model, launching a wave of trust that concentrated power across the economy. Standard Oil's trust was more than a business tool. It was a legal innovation that made nationwide monopoly possible, setting the stage for the political and legal battles that soon followed. Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1890. The law declared illegal any contract or conspiracy that restrained trade or attempted to monopolize interstate commerce. For nearly 2 decades, the law lingered as a warning, rarely enforced and often sidestepped by the very corporations it was meant to control. That changed in 1906 when federal investigators turned their focus to Standard Oil. Over weeks of raids and subpoenas, the Bureau of Corporations seized a trove of internal documents, 1,400 in total, some stamped confidential, others scribbled with margin notes from Standard Oil's top executives. These files did not merely hint at wrongdoing, they spelled out in black and white the mechanics of monopoly. Ledgers listed more than 150 named competitors systematically targeted and eliminated. Correspondence detailed secret railroad contracts, price-fixing arrangements, and plans for coordinated market manipulation. Memos described how rebates were negotiated behind closed doors and how pricing wars were launched to drive rivals out, only to raise prices sharply once the competition disappeared. The evidence mapped a deliberate strategy, not a series of accidents or isolated excesses. For federal prosecutors, the case transformed overnight. No longer built on rumor or the bitter testimony of ruined competitors, it rested on Standard Oil's own words. The Sherman Act, once a distant threat, now became a legal sword sharpened by the company's own paper trail. As the files were cataloged and prepared for court, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of American law and the future of monopoly power in the United States. On May 15, 1911, the Supreme Court delivered a verdict that echoed through American business. Standard Oil must be dismantled. Chief Justice Edward White, writing for the majority, ruled that the company's conduct amounted to an unreasonable restraint of trade. The order was clear. Within 6 months, Standard Oil would be broken into 34 separate companies, each set adrift with its own board, assets, and obligations. The corporate names that emerged, Standard Oil of New Jersey, Standard Oil of New York, Standard Oil of California, Standard Oil of Indiana, and Standard Oil of Ohio, would become Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, Amoco, and Sohio. Stock certificates scattered across the financial pages, each successor now trading on its own merits. For John D. Rockefeller, the supposed punishment arrived as a windfall. He held shares in every one of the new companies. As the dust settled and Wall Street began to understand the true value of these once hidden assets, the market responded with a surge. The stock of the Standard Oil successors tripled in value over the next year. Rockefeller's personal fortune, estimated at $300 million before the breakup, swelled to nearly $900 million. What was meant to shatter monopoly power instead multiplied the wealth of its architect. The breakup did not sever the connections between these companies. Former Standard executives moved seamlessly into leadership roles, and informal understandings about markets and prices persisted. Over time, the most powerful of these firms, Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and a handful of others, formed the backbone of what the world would call the Seven Sisters, a cartel that would dominate oil for decades. The law had demanded division, but the marketplace delivered consolidation of a different kind. The remedy for monopoly, it turned out, was a new kind of empire, one that made its founder richer than ever. In 1914, John D. Rockefeller turned to Ivy Lee, a former reporter with a talent for shaping public opinion. Lee's monthly memos and press releases began to recast Rockefeller as a gentle benefactor, never a ruthless monopolist. Photographers staged moments of Rockefeller handing out dimes to children, smiling for the cameras. Newspaper stories, carefully placed, praised his generosity and vision. Behind the scenes, Lee's correspondence with Rockefeller's office reveals a calculated campaign to manage every headline and biography. The goal was clear: bury the memory of price wars and backroom deals beneath layers of philanthropy and good works. That same year, lawmakers in Washington responded to Standard Oil's legacy with new rules. The Clayton Antitrust Act, signed into law in 1914, expanded federal power to block mergers and business practices that threatened competition. Congress also created the Federal Trade Commission, giving regulators sharper tools to investigate and prevent monopoly tactics. The Standard Oil case became the blueprint for future antitrust battles, from AT&T to Microsoft. Yet, as decades passed, enforcement softened. By the 1980s, the regulatory bite had dulled, and new giants began to rise in energy and technology. The Rockefeller Foundation's endowment, now hovering around $5 billion, funds medical research and global health efforts. But the shadow of Standard Oil stretches into the present. In the late 1970s, Exxon's own scientists warned executives that burning fossil fuels would heat the planet. Internal memos, uncovered in lawsuits and investigations, show that instead of warning the public, Exxon chose to suppress the findings and bankroll campaigns to cast doubt on climate science. The same corporate DNA is plain to see. Control the message. Protect the bottom line. It runs from Ivy Lee's press releases to modern boardrooms. The question lingers: can philanthropy and progress ever fully erase the origins of such power, or does the story of Standard Oil still shape the choices of its descendants? Today, Exxon Mobil and Chevron, Standard Oil's direct heirs, shape global energy policy, wielding influence rivaling nations. Antitrust law still struggles to contain power disguised as progress. The fortunes built on monopoly now bankroll climate denial and philanthropy alike. As new monopolies rise in tech and energy, the real legacy isn't just oil, it's the rules written to protect power. Who really benefits when history's winners get to write tomorrow's playbook? Join the conversation below.